this episode, I have all my questions about sorcerers answered, as I'm joined by Doug, who talks me through spell casting, the difference between magnitude and intensity, and how to embed sorcery into any campaign. Welcome to the Mythras Matters podcast, Season 1, Episode 77, Casting and Creating Sorcery and Sorcerers. Hello and welcome to Mythras Matters, a podcast dedicated to the Mythras rule set and all its supplements. As always, I am your host, Inwils, and welcome to January. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. Hurrah! We have another packed episode for the first month of 2026, so we are going to get straight into it. Back in 2025, I sent out a plea to help me understand sorcery, and Doug offered to take me through the various aspects of being a sorcerer. So, without further ado, I'll let him introduce himself. Spell components at the ready, everyone.
Hey folks, this is Raleel, otherwise known as Doug Nordwall, and I am the big moderator on the Mythras Discord as well as on the Mythras subreddit. I'm also a moderator on RPGpub.com, and if you find Raleel on the web, it's almost certainly me.
Brilliant. You're everywhere then. You're absolutely everywhere. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So hopefully I put out a plea in it was November's episode about helping with sorcery, and you have come to my aid to help me through understanding sorcery. So if I start off and you can then tell me all about it, because I'm starting from a strange position, because I know about wizards in fiction and films and D&D 5th edition, and I somehow feel that sorcery in Mythras is different. It doesn't seem to be the same. Is that true, or am I just looking at it in the wrong way?
Yeah, so sorcery in Mythras is, for starters, it's a non-Vancian casting system. So you don't forget your spells, and you're running the entire thing off of magic points. And I think a lot of people get attracted to it when they come to it because they're looking to play a wizard or perhaps a sorcerer from some other game, and they look and say, "Oh, this is the natural place to go for that." And to an extent, that's true, but I would say that Mythras' sorcery is designed around a different design ethos, right? It's the books that it's used in tend to have it sitting a little bit more as an evil villain thing. So, like in Book of Quests, the main character and the main adversary in that is a sorcerer, and sorcery is kind of shunned by everybody. And in Monster Island, sorcery is viewed as a thing that the serpent folk do, and they have all of their schools of thought with that. But it's really a way to build up your spells in a very hand constructed fashion. It really does evoke the notion of being able to control the universe. As like the intro to sorcery says something about being able to control the universe, and it really does do that, because you're individually controlling every single parameter that comes out of that. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. So One of the aspects of sorcery is this idea of shaping. And that seems that the sorcerers can have more and more control over the spells. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the shaping notion of it is really the fundamental aspect of it. With sorcery, you have a spell that sort of contains an effect, but it doesn't have any parameters that go along it. If you come from 5th edition, you're used to area or how many people it can hit and what the range of it is. You have that little stat block that's in front of every spell that kind of says all of that stuff. Well, all of that gets built by the sorcerer on the fly with shaping. So you have a range component that tells you how far away you can do. And that goes from anywhere from touch range to tens or hundreds of kilometers of range. Yeah. You can go from, it has a number of targets, which, 1 to however many shaping points you put into it. It includes a magnitude, which is an often misconfused one. I get a lot of questions about this, but it's the resistance of the spell. It's the resilience of that spell in the face of anti-magic, counter magics. And then you have like a duration, which most people are familiar with, and that goes anywhere from I think the minimum is your POW in minutes, if I remember correctly, and to some multiple of that, and that can change. There are a whole bunch of additional shaping components. I think the core rulebook has one for eroding your resistance to spells, and it has another one for making you re-roll your save. It has another one for shifting the location for location-based ones, and it has one for combining spells. And then you have Leoness has area and has some specific shaping components that are unique to that setting for you're bargaining with some entity for being able to extract out the service, and that is in of itself the spell. There's an article in Phoenix Magazine which actually makes intensity a portion of your shaping, which really alters the flavor of it. And so each one of these parameters that you can put on to enforce the sorcerer to change really can alter the flavor of the magic a great deal as you're going through and doing that.
And that shaping, if I'm right, increases the cost and the casting time.
It does. So by default, the basic spell it costs 1 casting point. That'll give you a single target. It will touch range. It will last for 15 minutes, so on and so forth. So if you wanted to just increase somebody's damage, let's just to pick one of the spells as a damage enhancement, you can touch them, and for as long as you're touching them, that will allow you to increase your damage, and if that'd be something that you might cast on yourself, so that your sorcerer can increase their own damage. But then if they want to increase that range, they're going to have to pay an additional magic point to get access to that component, to the range component, and then they pay shaping points to get that. And I think that's an important distinction to discuss, is that you're paying magic points to get access to the component, and then you're paying shaping points to alter that component. So if you want to make the range, you can go up, spend all your shaping points in range to make it super long range, and it only will require 1 magic point to do that. If you want to alter the targets and alter the range, and you want to alter the duration, that's going to require you an additional 3 magic points, because you're altering 3 components on top of the 1 for just activating the spell.
And the more shaping points you have, the more the degree of things you can change.
That's right. It's not how many things you can change, but the degree of that, for sure. So if you have a shaping of 91 or something like that, so then you would have 10 shaping points. So you can put 10 into 1 shaping component if you like. or you can spread that 10 points around the multiple shaping components and make something that's not quite as far range and not quite as long duration and not quite as many targets as you could with one, but you can do all of those things at the same time.
And it seems to me that these shaping points are almost like the essence of sorcery, because they can really change the spell effects dramatically, and especially number of targets, because
I mean, that's really the thing that gives you the feeling of controlling the universe, right? Because you have this sort of amorphous blob that you've constructed that doesn't do a lot by itself. I mean, might still be useful. Like if you let's take the example of rack, which is, I think, easy for everybody to understand because everybody understands the fireballs and magic missiles and all of that, right? So if you just take rack and say we're not going to do any alteration to that, well, now you have a shocking grasp style spell, like you can touch somebody and you do damage, right?
Yeah.
But even putting 1 point into range, you spend your magic point in the range and then you spend 1 point of shaping into range. You're now able to shoot that spell, 15 meters or something like that, right? Like, so now that spell is very different. Now you have something that is might be a low level spell in D&D. Then you move up to, you start increasing the number of targets. Let's say you go from 1 target to 3 targets, and you increase the range a little bit more. So now you have something that might be like Scorching Ray in 5th edition, where it can hit multiple targets, and you have some more serious range on it. One thing I will note while we're talking about the different components and how they can alter the field, even the base level Mythras sorcery spells have a duration, and that is a very different thing from most or for many D&D spells, particularly the damaging ones. So like D&D ones, you like shoot a magic missile and it's done.
Yes.
In Mythras, the base duration, the core rulebook duration without any alterations, says that you can shoot magic missiles for 15 minutes. Yeah. Right. Or your power number of minutes, right? Like it operates a little bit differently in that sense. For those of you who are familiar with it, it's probably like a spiritual hammer, which is a clerical spell in D&D, but you can sit there and keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So you may not actually need to keep casting over and over and over again to make that happen, which is different. It's a little bit different paradigm to be working with.
Yeah, that's something that I hadn't thought about before. So if we just sort of like think about the rack spell, which, most people understand. So that has a duration, a basic duration, therefore, of, or is it power in their minutes? Yeah. So can they sort of like hold that spell? Is that spell always present for like 18 minutes?
Yeah. So I mean, like you depending on how you sort of flavor it, I mean, you might even think about it as you have a set of spinning fiery motes around your head, and they sit there and spin around. And if you need to evade or do something else, get out of combat, you can do that. But then on your turn, you take an action, you concentrate on the spell, and you fire one of those off. And it does the damage, or maybe you're firing like 8 of them off because you're hitting 8 targets. So it will sit there for quite some time, and allow you to do it. And you may not need another attack spell that combat, right? For that, you just sit there and fire those things off.
Yeah. So do you need to take the hold? I think there's an action, hold magic. Do you need to take that action if you're holding the rack spell?
So no, you don't need to take the hold magic. That's for like, generally that's if you want to delay the action of using it. But in the case of Rack, it already has a duration associated with it, so it'll just sit there, and it only requires concentration when you're actually using it. And that's how most of the concentration sorcery spells are, or the ones that are there. The ones that don't have concentration, they just last for the duration, right? So like palsy might be a good example of one that's sort of in the same space as Rack. It hits a single location. Palsy has a duration, but it doesn't have any concentration. So you end up paralyzing a location for 15 minutes or something like that.
Yeah. So the idea is that once it's cast, that spell is active, and you can sort of like use it at any time. And that's really interesting. I hadn't realized that, because one of the things I found about sorcery is that it takes a while to cast things in combat.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of a product of the fine granularity of Mithras's combat, right? Like, we're talking about a 5-second round. Most people are getting 2 to 3 actions in that.
Yeah.
And so it does take a bit. You're not going to be up there in melee combat. Oh, I'm going to start casting a spell in the middle of that. That's pretty rough, unless you take the swiftness component, which might alter things a bunch.
Yeah. But it's almost like, before going into the room, therefore, Rack could be cast.
Yeah.
And
although you don't have any targets at that point. So that might be a thing. That might be a thing. If you were in a group that you're like, okay, we do dungeon crawling, and your GM allowed them to do that, you might allow them to ad hoc add targets to that spell if you like. But otherwise, they should probably be stepping back and saying, I'm not going to be up in the front and have your frontline guys prevent them from getting to you, so you can get to your second or third action to actually cast the spell.
Yeah. But spells like, is it damage resistance, and which I think gives you something like, I might be wrong because I'm just saying it off the top of my head, is that armor points that it gives?
There's damage resistance just gives armor points, and I can't remember if it stacks or not. I don't think it does, but so those are great for casting beforehand because they have a duration. And they don't require concentration, and your targets are there. So you could say, I'm going to cast damage resistance on everybody in the party, 3 or 4 people, 5 maybe. And, it's going to last 15 minutes because maybe we anticipate that there's going to be combat in this next room.
And you can combine spells in sorcery. Is that correct?
You can. Yes, you can. And it makes it harder, and it makes it a lot more expensive. But yeah, you can absolutely combine spells together. Sometimes that can give you a custom effect or something like that if you like. But ultimately the big thing of it is that it's an additional magic point per spell that you're combining, in addition to the extra shaping point that you're having to do. So, wow. And then in addition to the adding combine in itself, although, so it ends up being pretty pricey to combine spells together.
But very effective. I was just thinking things like, say, damage resistance and something like bypass armor. Those could be cast together as
they could be. So and the really efficiency that you get out of that is, and the reason it's so pricey is that you end up sharing the rest of the shaping components. So if you only have to use 5 shaping components to get 6 targets with that, and it works for both spells. So they get to share all the shaping components, and that's very, very effective on keeping it together, but also makes it hard to cast. So it's a hard penalty to cast 2 spells together, and formidable to cast 3 spells together.
So the difficulty grade will increase the more you put together. So magnitude. So this is the degree to resist, isn't it? So to dispel it or counter it or anything like that, that's when intensity is matched to magnitude. Correct. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep.
So I do lots of sorcerers or players just think I'll just stick with one because, the chance of it being dispelled is quite light.
It's very common to do that. So if you're going to go into a combat and you're looking at, it's like, oh look, it's a whole bunch of goblins and they don't have a caster with them, nobody that looks obviously like a caster, you're not going to bother putting in any magnitude into that spell, right? So it'll be magnitude 1. It'll be very easy to dispel and maybe still very effective, but it's still going to be a thing that nobody's going to be looking to dispel that immediately. Like I actually just recently I had to put in magnitude into a spell. I was in my online game. Shout out to Vasilis and his game that I've been in for like 2 years now.
Fantastic.
My sorcerer in that saw that there was another cast across the field, and I amped up the magnitude on my cast back that I tossed out in the first place. It turned out that was required because he also upped his magnitude because he saw that I was there, and it turned and I had put in more magnitude than he did, and so the cast back worked, and he knocked me down to 0 with a rack, but then he had multi-targeted and 4 more people came back and hit him in multiple locations. Ended up knocking him unconscious, and then he lost concentration on his fly, which caused him to fall, which then he took 46 to like 4 locations. And so it was a lot of damage, right? Like he ended up nearly killing himself, broke both of his arms, right? Like it was,
ouch.
It was a mess, but it turned out that cast back was, that was the pumping up the magnitude was absolutely the right choice there. But it doesn't always come up. Yeah, it doesn't always come up, right? Like it's not even super common that it comes up for lots of folks. Now, if you're running with something with a lot of theism in the game, that's a different story because theism, the intensity and the magnitude are identical.
Yes, yeah, and I often see the theist magic. It sometimes appears more powerful. Because of that, it seems to go off quicker and have higher intensity and magnitude straight off.
That does make some sense though, right? Like if you think about what the theme that they're kind of going for there is, that theism is you channeling the power of a god. And so you're saying, Thor, send me down your lightning bolt. It doesn't take a lot of, you're not shaping the universe. Thor's doing all the work for you, right? Like you're just kind of asking a favor. Yeah. And then he's sending down his power and you're just kind of helping.
You're just a vessel.
You're the 5-year-old helping dad with the tool, right? Like that's kind of what that is. But sorcery is a very different thing there. Because you're having to manipulate everything, and that's going to alter how their campaign goes, right? If you have sorcery and theism in a campaign, your sorcerer is going to be almost required to lower the number of targets to the number of range, not combine as many spells, because they're having to amp up that amplitude so much, or amp up the magnitude so much, right? Yeah. And so that kind of erodes their power, at least in some sense, or at least erodes what they can get away with, because this theist is going to blast through it.
Yeah. I haven't. Let me go back to casting because I have a question with that. Say for example, I've got my casting time is going to be 3 turns. Can I interrupt that at all? Can I do 2 turns and then wait and do something else on my 3rd turn, say, and then go back to casting time? Or
that's what I would use the hold magic action for.
Right. Yeah.
That would be exactly what I would use that for.
Right. So sort of like do a bit and then hold it and then finish it off at a later date.
Yeah.
So with Theist spells and sorcery spells, can they? I'm interested in your as a GM and a player. Can they dispel each other, or can only Theist spells dispel Theist magic and sorcery just sorcery magic, or do you allow them to cross over?
I allow them to cross over. I don't feel a lot of need to put in that sort of complexity into my game. I think there's probably already enough there with the differences between magnitude and intensity. So I just kind of allow that to happen, no problem. I think there's a certain point where that allows one player or the other to shine, and show that what their real power is, what their real use is. That doesn't necessarily involve putting a sword through somebody, which a lot of people see as that. But
I also think it's quite a nice ego boost for sorcerers in the sense that they can dispel, or stop divine magic,
It's like, look, I'm equivalent of a god here, right? Like they can say that. And I mean, and perhaps your character is the kind who looks at that and it feeds his ego, and that makes an interesting story in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
That gives the character some real flavor that goes on there.
So what about shaping is things that they can alter? Does sorcery require components, i.e. verbal components, hand gestures, material components?
So the default rules, I think, require you to be able to perceive the target. And need your hands free and to be able to speak.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, and I don't know that there's any more that are required there. And if you are missing any of those,
I think the one might be one of being sane mind or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you need to be of coherent thought. So if you're missing any of those, that imposes a difficulty penalty on your roll. So hard, formidable, Herculean, whatever. So those things are those penalties kind of stack. And so you could theoretically cast that spell with your hands bound and your mouth gagged and your eyes and your ears plugged, right? You could still do it, cast it on a target. You'd have to crit, right? But you could do it.
You can still do it, yeah.
And this is where that focus component comes into play and becomes really useful, because the focus component allows you to reduce penalties for casting. Using it with Combine is like the straightforward option there, because Combine also puts on a penalty. So if you wanted to combine 6 spells together, you can't do that without focus, right? Like you need to be able to focus to reduce that 5 levels of penalty there down to something where you can actually make a roll.
Right.
So and the other side of that is if you are bound and gagged and blinded and not even of the same mind, right? You might be able to focus to be able to cast some spell there if you have enough points in it. Hopefully you're doing something to remove one of those penalties, because it gets pricey to do that, but
these are the alternative components, aren't they? In the because I've never used those at all, and I'm just looking at them now, thinking, "Ooh."
They're really fantastic. My sorcerer in my online game has focus as a component, and then has another one that I don't remember I think it's fortune. Also has fortune, which
Yeah.
fortune forces the target. You use it with resist based spells, and it forces the target to re-roll or to roll again, and then you get to pick which ones that they get to use, right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty great way to make sure that your spells get through.
Yes, definitely.
There are some of the combinations of those that get pretty strong when you start putting it together. So, like if you use swiftness with fortune, you end up you can make very fast casting spells that are forcing everybody to re-roll, and you're essentially crit fishing at that point.
Yeah.
Which it gets pretty serious. There. So you'll want to pay attention to what the effects are as you're going through and deciding to add that stuff. And you don't have to add. You don't even have to use all the components that are even in the base one. I mean, you could say, no, this school doesn't do combines, and maybe you're looking at that and saying, my player needs to have it simplified because this is their first sorcerer they're running.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you might say, no, there's no combines. Maybe there's not any duration. All spells last, maximum of this amount of time. And then maybe you go so far as to say, you know what we're going to do? I don't want you to deal with magnitude at all. So we're going to just take out magnitude. And so all you're left with is range and targets.
Yes.
And that's a very simple school, right? Like a very simple school. And then you could say, add it in when they get a rank, right? Like when they get the, they understand it a little better and how it operates. So you can say, okay, we're going to add those in at this point. Or maybe you add in and say, well, maybe they just like blasting spells, or they like ones that hit locations. And so we're going to use precision, which is another one of those optional ones that allow you to shift locations around.
They're very nice. I think Cyrus, our our sorcerer, would love some of those. I do love that fortune. It's almost like using a luck roll. When
you can force them. You can use an unluck roll on them, right? Like you're gonna take it on these spells. Very effective. The math of forcing somebody to roll again is pretty serious, and people can go look up the math on that, but essentially it's like equivalent of either an easy roll if you want it to be for good, or a formidable roll if you want it to be bad. And that's only for one reroll. Second reroll is gets even worse.
Yeah, exactly. So just when you're concentrating on a spell as a sorcerer or any caster, that can be interrupted, can't it? By doing damage or something.
So it can interrupt the process of casting, but it won't stop you from finishing it.
Right.
There is the spoil spell special effect, which got added a little bit later. And I haven't had anybody use it.
I don't know about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So page 99 of the current book has spoil spell, which automatically ruins the spell in process of being cast. Now, before that existed, there was no way to stop that spell, right? Like they would be casting you do damage to them. And pick, bleed or whatever, they're not going to stop casting the spell. But with spoil spell, they can forego that to disrupt the casting and force recasting of the spell.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it's a concentration spell, so which is rack a concentration spell?
Rack is, I think rack is a concentration spell, but you only use the concentration when you actually fire it off.
Okay. Yeah. So something like fly. I think that
Yeah.
requires concentration. So you mentioned in your online game, the concentration was broken. Is that what you said? And down he plummeted.
They did.
So to actually,
now to be fair, he got knocked unconscious.
Oh, right.
Yes. Most of these spells, most of the concentration spells only require the concentration when you're actively using them in some way. Fly when you're actively moving, or rack when you're actively shooting, or something like that. Right. But if he had, when he didn't have to move around to be concentrating on the spell, it would leave him hovering in the air. Yeah. But then he got knocked unconscious, which stopped the effects because they were not essentially active at that point.
Yeah.
And that's a parameter you can change to your games, right? If you like it, if you like it a little bit differently.
So, moving away from the mechanics, which I've learned so much, I'm really looking forward to playing a sorcerer as a GM now against my party. But one of the things that I found difficult is that with the Theist spells, they come in ranks. Well, but like brotherhood or cult ranks, they said, you have to be a high priest or something to use earthquake or something like that. But sorcery has nothing like that. So are all spells available for everyone? How does that work?
So I would say that that's very campaign dependent. The default is they're in a book and you can learn it. And so there's not really any gating behind the different ranks for that, by default. But even with theism, there's a default set of ranks in the book that, sort of based on what previous editions had. But if you were to go to look at Monster Island, the ranks of those theist spells are moved around quite a bit.
Right.
And so to fit that particular setting, and if you were to go look at Monster Island, the sorcery schools are blocked by rank as well, so they won't teach you the spell until you get to a particular rank. This is an advanced technique or whatever, and if you want to do that, right, like it kind of makes sense that you might have your sorcerer learn basic stuff. Maybe they learn to sense fire, or maybe do a small manipulations of stuff rather than just turn around and be tossing fireballs left and right. So it's by default no, there's no particular restriction. But I think it's pretty useful to have it in there, and it's easy for folks to understand, right? Like, because particularly since we have, how many millions of people have come to us from Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition.
Yeah.
Right. So they're like, oh, well, what's my next level spell? Well, it gives a sense of progress. It gives a sense of accomplishment. So I do that really regularly with my cults. I don't know how many sorcery cults I have up on D100 Blogspot or D100 Workshop on Blogspot, but I don't know. It's got to be something like 6 or 8 sorcery cults, and most of them do that, if not all of them. Just because I kind of like that.
So that's really so. Briefly, if it is possible. So how do you go about creating those sorcery cults?
So I think the biggest thing with a sorcery cult is that you want to have a theme behind it. Mythras sorcery, and this is going to be a little bit of a backup and kind of a big picture view of it. Mythras sorcery really thrives on the notion that you have a grimoire. It has a topic, a theme that's behind it that drives it. And if you want to have a generalist wizard has access to multiple grimoires
Right.
And each one of them has different themes, and they provide him with the different spells, and he has different skills in each of those grimoires, which seems kind of onerous from the perspective of a player, but also but it is also really makes that if you find somebody who is good in 3 or 4 grimoires, you're like, whoa, this sorcerer is extremely powerful, extremely experienced. It probably has maybe 100 experience points rolls tossed around in various things. So when I build up a cult, I try to keep it to a theme. So I will, maybe an illusion cult or a pyromancy cult or a necromancy cult.
Yeah.
Something like that. Something in the scope of a D&D 5e wizard. Although, frankly, and not to trash 5e very much, but it's I find the sorcery cults end up so much more interesting than even the precursors to the current 5th edition wizard.
Yeah,
you can put so much more flavor into it, so much more mechanical heft behind it to make it really, really interesting. Like I have one cult up there that I did as a sort of challenge, where I had a lot of people complaining about Rack and how it was too powerful, and it shouldn't be a low rank spell, and I made the entire cult is based on Rack. Like there's almost no other spells in the cult. So
nice.
so it's you start out with Rack, but you don't get all the shaping components to go along with it.
Oh, yes.
And so each rank you get more shaping components, and you get another version of Rack, right? Like you start with like Rack Fire, and then you can have like Rack Ice, and you get an additional shaping component, and somewhere in the mid ranks you start getting a little bit other stuff, like you might get like a protective ward to go along with your Rack, and so now you can make walls of fire or walls of ice, right?
Nice.
And so it was a real challenge to do that, but I thought it was ended up with a really interesting character in the end of that, a really interesting cult that frankly made some sense. And I've got a Conjuring one out there that I did I looked at the 5th edition Conjurer and I said, you can be more interesting than that. And I'm really proud of those ones, because they just like drip flavor. They don't feel generic at all. They're like, whoa, that is very, very different and deep, and in some cases dangerous, right, for the character itself.
And I think that one of the things I like about sorcery is the sense that you never know for sure what you're up against, if that because if it was a magic user in 5th edition, you generally know the sorts of spells that they might have, but the sorcerer could have anything depending what is actually learned.
No, you're absolutely right. Like in 5th edition, my experiences have been that you have there are a set of spells that virtually every wizard takes, and they are self-admittedly by the people biased towards those spells because they're classic.
Yes.
And there isn't a lot of house ruling that goes on to it. You don't see a lot of, well, it's not a fireball, it's an ice ball, right? You don't see a lot of that.
Yeah.
But with sorcery, because of the lack of flavor, you're encouraged to really do that. It's not, you can you get the sorcerers like, well, he's got Rack. Yeah, but what kind of Rack is that? I have no idea. Well, it's a necrotic Rack or something like that, right? It could be a whole bunch of things. It could be firebolts that come out.
Yeah, and I think that ability to be able to put the sorcerer's own signature on Rack, and even call it something completely different.
They absolutely should. They should go look in one of these Jack Vance books, or go pick up Leoness and say, what do they call it? Go find out some go figure out some ridiculous name to go along with it.
Exactly.
I forget what the what the Monster Island one is. It's something like Castigate Upstart or something like that. I'm like, absolutely love that. Like, oh yes, please bring me more of that highfalutin, pompous energy that goes along with that. That I really do enjoy that. I mean, it could be a whole bunch of stuff, like the Phoenix article with the spell singers that has intensity as a shaping component that has rack in it, and it's a damaging spell song. And it has some parameters, some additional stuff to modify it a little bit, but it's absolutely a thing that where you're like, you're supposed to change these. You're supposed to make them yours. You're not supposed to look at it and just go, I'm just going to drop this in the game. No, don't do that. Put some flavor on it.
100%. So one of the things that, when I was looking through sorcery, there seems to be that element of summoning and control, whether or not it's creatures from other planes, etc. Like pure, almost like warlock based. Is that something that needs to be in sorcery? I've never got that far, by the way. I don't know how powerful these creatures would be.
Well, so I mean, I don't think you need to have it in any particular school if you don't want it. I mean, and I probably should say here that for the most part we're talking about the evoke spell and not the summon spell, because the summon spell actually just gets you a book or something like that from across the room, right?
Correct. Yeah.
But so with evoke is sort of tantamount to summoning a spirit. It's pretty much the same thing, right? Like if you were to compare using trance to find a spirit and evoke to summon a spirit, they're going to be pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And what spirit that you summon depends on the scope of the spell that you're getting out. So that's going to have to be defined a lot. Like you might go pull up the Phoenix article on Jinn and summon up a Jinn, for example, or you might summon up demons, which is an option for my character that he's chosen not to pursue at all. It might be something else entirely. Like you may be using evoke to summon up elementals, elemental spirits, like and allow them to animate it. But I think it's important to note that there's no inherent control implied in the spell. So you might require something else to go along with that to make it go. But it's not required for any particular sorcerer school, and maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, and I think that because there's a lot about creatures as well, dominating creatures. Am I right in that, or calling creatures towards you? And but you also get shape change as well. I think you can shape shift. Is that
you
correct?
You can draw creatures towards you. You can dominate creatures. You can enslave creatures. You can shape change into creatures. I mean, there's so much stuff that you can do there. Some of the books, like After the Vampire Wars, and one other one that's escaping me that I just saw the other day. They appropriate theism spells and drop it into sorcery. Because they wanted a particular effect. So like After the Vampire Wars, like pulls in earthquake into sorcery. And so you can, now your sorcerer can make earthquakes. And it's pretty easy to do that. It doesn't require like a lot of work or anything like that. A little bit of jiggering of making sure that you got your parameters covered, but not too hard at all.
It sounds brilliant. And I'm really getting a feel of what sorcery is, but also it's interesting talking to you has brought out the power of sorcery to me, how wonderfully powerful it is.
Sorcery is it has moments of extreme power. Although I mean, I might argue that theism is more powerful out of the gate, but sorcery really can alter the scope of a game rather drastically. If you're not careful with it, like, so, if you were to say theism is like, well, you can summon elementals and elementals are extremely powerful, and but they're kind of limited in their range, right? Like they can only go so far, even if you get an air elemental or something like that, where they can only go so far from you, which is,
Yes.
I forget what it is. It's like 60 meters or something like that. It's not very far. With sorcery, they can affect things from kilometers away, from out of sight, like out of sight, and that can impact your game in ways that you don't expect, because as we all know, the players are very good about thinking up stuff that you didn't think up. And so I mean, it can be something that when you bring it into your game, you have to pay a close attention to what's going on there. Like, maybe you start and things that maybe you start throwing in things that are going to protect critical elements from magic, right? Like you're putting in a low level spell resistance on top of that to make sure that they have to get their magnitude up to a particular point, and that makes it hard for them to get into range because they can't spend it all into range, and so they end up getting into a spot where they get close enough to be able to overcome the magnitude. Now they're inside some other defense that you've laid up. In some ways, it's sort of like animism in that sense, because animism has the ability to really, your players can go a long ways with just having animism and being able to scout with trance and whatnot. It can be different. So for my local campaign, that's a thing that has come up a bunch, right? Like I have to put in defenses because it's a very high magic world. It's a Shadowrun like cyberpunk game, and it's pretty high magic, and so it's not uncommon for them to run into spell barriers or spirit barriers. To require some alternative approach into there. You can't just shoot them from afar. You can't scry and die, as we used to say.
That's amazing. One last question? Okay, the enchant spell, which allows you to put sorcery spells into objects. I think that's what I read. Is this the create a magical item, in Mythras?
Yeah, so it is at least one version of it. So enchant is a great way to store a magical effect in an item. So you might use it to make a staff that allows you to shoot magic and shoot rack or whatnot. The thing about it is that the model for it is different than most other games that we've seen, right? Like you store your magic points in there. They get secluded off into that item and unavailable for use because that spell is still sitting there active to use. So you're going to put in 1 point for the spell, 1 point for the combined, 1 point for the additional spell, and then it starts, and then you might be altering the effects. And so these aren't going to be particularly high powered magical items. Like store mana is always the good go-to example in the book, and I think it's a good example of how to use it well. You might spend 1 for the combined, 1 for the spell, one for the other spell, and then not put any other shaping components into that. And now you've isolated off 3 points, but you can store your intensity and spell points probably into that item. That can make sense, but now you have a ring of spell storing, right? Like a ring of magic storing, and that's a trove that you can go and raid every now and then, but you're going to have to feed it back later, right? So it's the bank of spell points you can borrow and pay back. And it makes sense in a low magic environment, right?
Yes. So there's always that balance between what you've got stored and what you've still got available.
Yeah, so, and if you to expand it out a little bit more, like you go take a look at Monster Island has matrices, depending on how you say that, how you want to say that. And that one is a little bit different in that it allows you to design an item that can cast the spell, but it requires somebody to power it or something to power it. So you could make a wand of you can make a wand of magic items or a wand of rack, say.
Yeah.
And it handles the casting for you, but you have to feed it magic points.
You have to feed that power into it for it to happen. So just to finish off, what words of advice would you give to any player or GM who's considering using sorcery?
So for GMs, I would say be thoughtful when you go through it. Spend some time, work with your player. They're going to be super excited and they're going to want all of the things all at once. Get unless they're a really experienced Mythras player, then don't let them have everything at once. Say let's start with some stuff and then we'll go from there. Be careful with the considerations that you're going to go through there. For the player, it doesn't work like 5th edition Magic. It's going to feel slow. I guarantee that it's more powerful. Certainly at the outset, it's way more powerful. Don't get discouraged by the fact that you have to roll to cast it. And for the love of everybody else at your table, do up a few standard spell effects with the shaping components so you know exactly what they do. Like, this is going to require me X number of spell points. This is going to be this, and this has got this effect. So pre-build a few spells out so that you some go-to ones.
100%. And I must admit, when I'm GMing Sorcerer, so I always do that. I always have everything, this is going to be the casting of magic points and the casting time for that.
Yeah. It really saves a bunch of time.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much, Doug. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I am now prepared to go off and breathe life back into my sorcerers. So thank you so much.
And thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
And that's it. Another episode of Mythras Matters completed. Don't forget you can check out all my content by following my YouTube channel and the campaign areas on World Anvil. If you would like to support my creator career even further, then do check out my adventures, encounters, and my newly published fanzine, Animated Dead, which are all available full download on my Ko-fi page. So until next time, have a great month of gaming, and I will chat to you all again in February. Until then, I hope all our opposed roles succeed and provide you with a well-deserved special. Thanks for listening, everyone. See ya. Bye. The content of this podcast is covered by the Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license, so please give appropriate credit if you are sharing or copying any part of this podcast. Thank you. Only a very quick little chat after the end of the podcast this month. Just to say thank you to everybody who subscribes to my YouTube channel. I recently hit over 2,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support.